Yo, how's everybody doing today? Hope you're doing well. But let's get into this video. Thank you for your time for clicking in on this. For those who can't recognize the voice, my name is Evan Gray. You can find me up in the academic center. My door's right next to the printer. My door is always open. Probably have a question for the day. Please come in and answer. But enough of the distraction. Let's get into the video. So part of a little bit of my role is I'm the assistant athletic director of student athlete wellness and academic support services. So on top of helping athletes with advising them, I also help educate on life skills. It is my job to make sure you all have understanding on certain life skills such as financial literacy, DEI, and for this topic today, it is civic engagement. Now, I have walked in and asked multiple athletes that in the academic center, what do you think civic engagement is? And a lot of them had no idea what the real definition was. So a big part of this presentation will understand the importance of civic engagement, why it's being talked about, and why November 7th is such an important date. So, without further ado, let's get into this presentation. So, like I said, the definition of civic engagement itself is basically, in a nutshell, it's events or ways to provide value and the quality of life for the community around you. In short, you're making a difference in your community. As student athletes, you have such a big impact on kids, organizations, or just anything or any type of company around this area. People want to hear from you. You have the power to make change collectively as a population. So it's important to get out there and make a difference in your community. Some examples of that could be to reading to kids in Oyster River. Voting is probably the most important one. Making sure your voice is being heard or your opinions are being heard. Um, Volunteering at a soup kitchen, helping the homeless, maybe doing like something with Habitat for Humanity and help building a house somewhere, or even giving blood, even though it's not for everybody. But those are examples of civic engagement. Political involvement is probably the most straightforward example of it. You vote, can't write letters and help your representatives commit change. Research, look up things that interest you and form opinions that kind of help you understand things better. um, Association involvement. Find organizations on this campus. There are so many resources at your disposal, especially as athletes, and people want to work with you. That's the beautiful thing, too. Whether that be the Black Student Union, SAC, any organization like that. Work with individuals and peers like your own, Division One athletes, and try to have some real change around this community. Like I said, direct service can even go into giving blood, the bone marrow drive, just examples like that. So, in a nutshell, that is what civic engagement is. So, now you're probably wondering why this is so important. November 7th is what is civic engagement is. So, Civic Engagement Day is the first legislation that the Division One SAC committee has presented. And before I get even into more of that, why is it important? You should know what SAC even is. The Student Athlete Advisory Committee, which stands for SAC, is a very important because every institution has a SAC. Representatives from every team are involved in SAC. SAC is important because it basically gives athletes a voice in the athletic department. We want to hear from each athletic department or each team and understand what needs to be changed, what's going on. So it's important to be a part of that. If you have any more questions or concerns or you want to get to know more about SAC, please reach out to me. My office is always open. But just to give more into what SAC is, every institution has a SAC representative from each team. Every conference, so example, the America East Conference has a SAC with representation from every university in the conference. So Bryant, NJIT, Maine, there's a SAC program in each of those institutions. So now SAC at the Division One level, so this Division One conference has representation from every conference. So that could be Power Five, America East, Midwest, stuff like that. So those conferences all have SAC and have a say. So what makes this important is because the Division One SAC proposed legislation that would give student athletes a required day off each year for civic engagement and voting activities. This proposed legislation was the first time SAC, which is again is your fellow student athletes, proposed legislation since given the ability to do so in 2014. So this act of legislation is basically the first kind of piece that was established to give athletes a voice and have your opinions heard. So that's why it's such an important kind of legislation. It's slowly but surely just giving athletes more of a voice, especially in the world we live in now. People want to hear from you more and more. You guys have platforms, especially now with NIL, and other stuff like that. People want to hear from you. You have the power to spark change throughout all of your communities on a either it be a campus wide situation or a national level. That is the beautiful part of being a Division One athlete, in my opinion. So getting into kind of the constructs of what civic engagement is. Civic action, the participation activities such as volunteer work or service learning to help better the community. A good example of that is reading to kids to Oyster River, your voting, doing volunteer work, a canned food drive, some type of group activity to better the community, whether that could be helping local businesses around the area or like I said, just kind of the stuff that's already in place for some of the sports teams. It's a good way just to kind of help everybody around the Durham community and make this a better place. Civic skills. I believe this is a really important one of construct of this. The ability to be involved in civil society, politics, and democracy. It's important to educate yourself on what is important to you, what really matters. Being able to apply political and civic knowledge to systemically analyze civic related issues and scenarios. So if you have an opinion on something that you think is going wrong in this country or campus, educate yourself on the topic and try to find ways to spark change or at least have a conversation about why something is and why you could try to prevent it. So that involves having personal communication skills, active listening. Don't just listen to one thing and it go out the other ear. Take the time to actually educate yourself on matters that are going on this campus. Like I said, and another lastly, critical thinking. Think of ways and have solutions to have something change. And lastly, have empathy. Empathy is really important. Try to understand other people with your opinion and others who might have a different opinion. Have have difficult conversations with one another. Find some type of maybe even common ground and work on change. Don't just shut down an opinion just because you think it's wrong. Hear it out. And I think that's the main reason of a good component of civic skills. Lastly, civic commitment. This one's pretty straightforward. Willingness to be a contributing member of society, basically. So, if you commit to doing giving blood, sit down, get it done. Working at a soup kitchen for maybe a certain amount of time. If you volunteer to work for a week, commit to that week. And do it with a smile. Know that you're making someone's day working at a place like that. Helping out the homeless, donating clothes. When you make commitments like that, it really goes a long way. One commitment that I did for Habitat for Humanity in high school was I helped build a house in South Carolina, and I was there for a week. So commitment like that is really important. And as like I said, as athlete or businesses, any type of kind of organization around you, especially kids, look up to you. That's why make you guys having a voice and making change and giving back to this community is so important. And lastly, social cohesion, the strength of relationships and the sense of solidarity among members of community. So this one's just kind of important because you can even think of it as a team. Like you guys, as a team, your own sports teams, you could find ways to spark change. Whether you help with the Black Lives Matter movement, LGBTQ community rights, stuff like that. have some type of team, come up with ways to spark change. I think that's the most important thing of this. You People want to hear from as a whole. So if you guys come together and bring up issues that you have as a population, that's the best way to spark change, honestly. So you've heard enough talking from me for a little bit. Another part of this video, like I said, I went around the field house, asked anybody I could to kind of give me what their take on civic engagement is and why is it important. So the next part of this video, you're going to listen to coaches, players, and even administrators on what civic engagement means to them, how it's changed over the years, and why is it so important for student athletes to get involved with it. So, talk to you again a little bit soon.
So the history teacher and social studies teacher in me wants to remind everybody civics means basically your duties as citizenship, right? And as citizens, we all have some obligations, and whether they're to each other, whether it's to our country as a whole. I hope every one of you is registered to vote. For me, civic engagement means being actively involved in things that make my community better. And sometimes that's community service, sometimes that's serving on a board or a committee. I'm lucky. I was a child of the 80s, so I've been able to go to Washington and do some protest marches. I've been able to participate in some big events that were to bring attention on a national scale, but also on a more local one. So whether you serve on your library board, whether you do community service like help with a food drive, all of that is giving back to your community, which is what citizenship is about. And I hope as citizens, regardless of what country you're in, you make sure you exercise your voice and that you all understand it's our duty to take care of each other. And whether that's through passing just laws, whether that's through electing officials that we know are going to act on our best behalf, or whether that's helping people get to the polls so that they can vote, whatever that looks like, I hope all of you guys are participating in that.
Civic engagement to me is a really broad term, and I think a lot of people only think about voting with civic engagement, but to me, it includes all sorts of different volunteer work, anything where you are helping other people, like with your own time, not getting paid for it at all, but just going out into the community and kind of giving back with the resources that you have on your person. I think it's really cool that this is the first legislation that SAC has helped pass, and I think it has really opened the doors for SAC to be involved in a lot more NCAA legislation, and that's anything from like NIL to talking about whether or not we should split into two different divisions of Division One. And so I think it's really cool that the NCAA is trusting student athletes, and I think it's really awesome that as a student athlete, I'm able to have a voice and give back and kind of help shape what's really affecting me.
Civic engagement I've done in the past is last year I voted for the first time, which is really important because it was on issues of reproductive health in my home state where I live. So it was important to give my voice to have a change and effect for those policies.
So the best example of civic involvement really is John DeCaro and Cameron Lyle. John was a football player who donated bone marrow in the football bone marrow drive, and then Cameron Lyle, he gave up his entire spring senior season as a thrower to go out and donate bone marrow. I mean, that's the highest level, but it can be anything from picking up garbage, going to the Goodwill, going to homeless shelters, going to food pantries, getting involved weekly, monthly, or yearly. The one thing about it is, people ask all the time, has civic involvement dropped? Actually, I think it's gotten more enhanced. I think it's gotten more enhanced because I think people care a lot more. I think the education such as this is very, very important. And for us to go forward as a society, it's very, very important to engage in the civic part of it.
Well, I think that for me, I've seen it change pretty significantly over the years that I've been coaching, which is a lot. I think these student athletes, students in general, are so much involved in what's going on in their world politically, issues with climate change, issues with all kinds of very important
topics. I think now kids are more tuned to it. They're reading about it. They're having opinions about it. They're listening to different people talk about the different areas, and so I just think it's awesome. They're so engaged now.
Some forms of civic engagement that I've participated in was voting, and I think it's really important to vote just because it's a way of you being able to put someone in office that represents what you believe and your values, and it's also really important just to do it. And then another one I did was Meals on Wheels. There's a lot of people out there with food insecurities, and they need help, and I think a lot of us are lucky enough to be able to have a good meal 3 times a day, and some people aren't, and they need help, so gotta help them out.
So civic engagement to me is using your platform as a student athlete to give back to your local community, whether it be at home or in Durham, the local area. I've done stuff with high school athletes and middle school athletes back home in Georgia, with me being a camp counselor. I've also done stuff up here, like Be the Match, and I've also read with my team at Oyster River Middle School and Elementary School. I think it's really important for us as student athletes to push on our platform to help out and be good role models to society.
Some examples of civic engagement that I've done is working at a soup kitchen. I've done that the last 6 years of my life, and the commitment of that is very tough. So we see people coming in and out, coming through shelter houses and shelter homes, and we feed them food on Thanksgiving and stuff like that. And just at a time of need, and me having my family and everything, that was a really huge change, and I continue to do it every year, ever since the first year I've done it, just to help those people out and give those people a meal and just help those people feel good about themselves and talk to them and have conversations with them.
What civic engagement means to me is just really helping out with the community, being involved, and making sure that the whole field house and all the athletics get engaged, especially with Durham and all the surrounding towns. What we do as a team here, we read to Oyster River Middle School. We read the kids. It's a great time. We have a blast with it. The kids love it. We also do the bone marrow drive, which ultimately it helps someone who has a bone marrow disease, and if they need a transplant, and if someone matches it, it can save a life. And lastly too, I think November 7th we have a Hoops for Hunger coming up. If you're free on that day, come check it out. Thanks.
Civic engagement is important to me because part of civic engagement is being a good patron and kind of giving back and voting for your future. And so I would say that civic engagement for me is most prominent when we talk about voting. So voting in local legislations, national legislations. You are the voice of the future, and you don't have really room to complain if you're not voting for your future. And I would say that also plays a really big part of my life right now through SAC, whether that's through our small SAC here at UNH or our America East SAC, or even the NCAA SAC. At all levels, we're voting on legislation to get passed, and that legislation starts with our voices, and it gets passed because of our voices.
Civic engagement is something that everyone should participate in. For example, for myself, I voted last year. I think the purest form of civic engagement is getting out and voting. It's the only way to cultivate pure change in this society.
Civic engagement is important to me as a student athlete because it gives me a way to give back to the community and give back to the kids that are growing up in this day and age. Some ways that me as a student athlete and my teammates have given to the community is by reading to kindergartners. We've donated cans for the food frenzy through the America East, and just using our voices as the people who are in the programs now to make a change for the ones that are coming below us.
As members of a community, it's our responsibility to be engaged, to help make the community better and sustainable. Civic engagement could include things like voting, but it could also be speaking up, it could be joining town meetings, it can be engaging in community service projects, all with the idea, though, of making the community better. Plus, I always feel that if I don't engage, if I don't vote, if I don't express my opinion, then I can't complain about it later. So, thanks for your engagement, thanks for thinking about it, and go Cats.
All right, back into the presentation. I'm glad you got to hear from other people other than me talk about civic engagement. We're about wrapping up the end of this presentation, but lastly, one thing I really want to address is just kind of the importance of this. Some of you might be asking, why is really us talking about this important? And I just want to take the time to say, your generation, especially with millennials and Gen Z, single-handedly changed the social and political landscape. This generation has changed how things work, how information is spread through the nation. Just with social media alone or platforms, you help influence the last presidential election. I remember all that stuff happening, and you just see so many videos, whether it be Trump or Biden, and you could get it through TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. So many information output links are shared through social media, and I think our generation is has like influenced that to a T. So this gives you the ability to share messages and talk with your peers, to have and intellectual conversations and understand your values and other people around you in a way no generation has had before. And that's the most important thing. That's why you have to really take advantage of the opportunities around you and make sure your voice is heard, especially when it comes to voting or anything political or social on this campus. Something like that should be really celebrated. And the point of this legislation is for you to take advantage of all the opportunities that you have, whether it be in this community, your home state, or anything like that. Now, lastly, just to bring up some civic engagement opportunities around you, Hoops for Hunger, which is actually on the Civic Engagement Day, which is November 7th, is a SAC event on here where we collect non-perishable items to donate to those in need around the area. It is a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and it's very important just because you have that competitive edge as athletes. I know some people probably can't join because of their sport, but it's a real fun event. I highly recommend you take a chance and go by and attend, or at least just watch and spectate. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're really taking the time to help those in need. Other than that, this is coming up next year, but Bench Out the Stigma, although it's kind of not civic engagement, we're coming together as a group of athletes, as teams, and we're bringing up the matter of mental health, which is something athletes struggle with all the time with your busy schedule and other stuff like that. Alternative Break, look this up. It's a really cool event every spring break. A group of UNH students go somewhere in this country and help build a house. I think that's the most important thing. It's a real cool event. I know some people can't, depending on the sport, can't do it, but you get to help make a change with whether it be athletes, people in fraternities, sororities, or just any UNH student. Other than that, Cats Cupboard is another type of non-perishable organization that it's canned food drive basically, which is really cool. The Red Cross, they have a bunch of blood drive donations throughout the month of December. There's 3 different ones, I believe. If you're interested in giving blood, look up that. And then lastly, if you Google UNH Serve, the first thing you'll see is a bunch of volunteer options that are all throughout the Durham community. That is the most important thing. Just looking at, there's some things that I even didn't know. So if you really want to spark some change and help those in need, that is a real good resource to have. It'll be a great opportunity, especially in your free time. And if you really want to brighten someone's day, you really should look into doing something like that. Besides that, that's the last of I want to say about it. Like I said, really take civic engagement seriously. Go out there and really impact others. Real good opportunity, and it's really, really, truly a blessing to have that power, honestly, guys. But all right, you heard enough from me. God bless you. Have a great rest of the day, and go Cats.